Alright, patch day. Voice chat's finally in. I think the big thing though is we're finally getting balance changes. Game's been out for like a month and a half, but well, at least we didn't beat Apex Legends in like 3.5 months. Crazy. Okay, let's see what we got here. Jonah is getting 2 seconds to her grapple. Okay. Kinda wish they hit her mines, the easier part of her kit, but it's a good starting point. Some bug fixes and visual changes. Oh, Drakal's getting one of his perks shifted around. It's interesting. Still feel like his left click and shift do a lot of damage. Hope they hit that soon. Earl, okay. He's getting a small red line nerf. Alright. Ooh, Rahi? What? Half a meter to his jump. That's not really gonna change much. Oh, Sazan, did she get a perf upgrade? No, just some visual things. Okay, Shakiri getting 1 meter move speed while moving backwards. What? Oh, Summer. Okay, finally. Wait, they're just hitting the pounce? This isn't even going to change how it works. They're just going to make it feel worse to use. What? Alright, okay, they must have hit Tosca. Wait. Doesn't spend energy if she fails her blink? And they made it easier to blink upwards? What is this? What are they doing? Hey folks, my name is Kason, although you may know me as Kalo, and today we gotta talk. I was already planning on doing these tier list videos about monthly, but this one's gonna be a little different. As you heard in the beginning skit, it's been about a month and a half since the game came out, and we've had all of about one balance patch, this one included. I don't mean to meme it too hard, but literally the only other changes we've got were about a month ago on June 6th, and the only changes were 5 damage to Kiri's gun and sword, and they made Brother faster when you sent him outwards. That's literally it. So this being the only real balance patch since the game's come out, you kind of want and expect some shaking up of the meta, and well, we didn't really get that. I plan for these monthly tier list videos to start with some sort of disclaimer saying that if you don't understand how my tiers work, you can go to the first tier list video I made, which goes through it in depth, but it's not really going to matter for this one because pretty much nothing has changed. That said, today's video is going to be talking about the big issues kind of holding down the whole roster and how I think the devs should be working around that. But before I get into it, the first and really just the take-home statement I want to make here is that the devs need to be pumping out more balance updates. I was testing this game for years before it came out, and the team has always been very moderate and careful about their balance changes. They seem very scared to experiment with things. I don't know. I used to be more understanding of this because they had to balance between modes and they didn't want to pick a favorite before getting it out to the public and yada yada, but at this point it all just seems like excuses, honestly. This is a hero shooter slash MOBA. Like, the main focus in the game are the characters. If they are not exciting and the meta doesn't change and people can't discover things as time goes on, then the game gets stale. That's just how it is. And with a roster this small, you need to be making proactive changes to keep it fresh. Not to just mix it up for the hell of it, of course, but when the game is feeling solved a month after launch, with the same team winning all the tournaments with the same composition, you have to ask yourself, why aren't they making changes? Why not mix it up? I understand that balance isn't a high priority right now. They've got big architectural changes to the game itself that are being made, but you have a balance team. You guys can make numbers changes relatively easy, but I don't know if it's this hierarchy or what. I don't know. I don't want to rant on that for too long. Let's get into the lists. Oh boy. We're going to start with the competitive tier list. That's how it's always going to be. For context, watch the first video on how these work. Same thing if you want to see the old list to compare. At first glance, it may seem funny that the composition that the team winning all the tournaments is running is at the top, all in the nerf tier, but you have to realize that not much had to change for that to happen. Summer moved up 1 tier from S to SS, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but Tosca is the first thing I want to talk about. She moved up from the A tier to the SS tier. Tosca was already a great character, and I had her in the SS tier in the solo queue tier list. The reason why she's moved up to the SS tier in the competitive tier list is that the things she's weak against simply can't match up to her, especially after this patch. Cezanne is infamously a bad character because of the perf she has. She's very laggy, inconsistent with her no-regs, and just not great in the performance realm, and that brings her down as a character. Honestly, she would be in the C tier if it wasn't for the fact that you can still do great with her, assuming that your shots are hitting and you're on a decent server and such. She's a good character, she just is bogged down by this bad perf. And that's enough to put Tosca in the SS tier. A great Tosca can just go wild on enemy teams. She has no hard counters. She has to be respectful of characters like a Jonah or even Earl's right click or getting too close to Draken Summer, but a great Tosca doesn't let any of that happen. A great Tosca just kills who she wants to. In one of the tournaments, in I believe it was the semifinals, my teammate Stormy literally 1v4'd as Tosca. We had a team fight, it didn't go great. I got their Earl to like a 5th health, so really low, but everybody else on their team was pretty healthy, and Stormy on Tosca cleaned up everybody. Finished off the Earl, killed the Jakal, killed the Summer, and then their Mendoza ran away because the Tosca would have beat him too. It's just a really high impact character when played well, and I honestly think that they need to get nerfs right now. Something I'm going to do, I think specific to this video, is make suggestions. Usually I stay away from doing that, but it's been a month and a half and we got barely a balanced patch that didn't change anything, so I feel like I need to be proactive myself. Tosca, I think she needs bigger damage fall off. Her gun is supposed to be a dot shotgun, but she doesn't really have to be that close to targets to full dot them in one clip. I think if you really had to be up in somebody's face, like a few more meters than she does right now, then she'd be in a better spot. I think that's a good starting point. The other way you could go is to hit her mobility and make blink cooldown a second longer or something like that. I think it feels better to go with the damage fall off route though. I don't know, I can only speculate so much because the devs aren't putting these changes in for us to test. Moving on to Jakal, spoiler that he's going to be in the SS tier in the solo queue tier list, and I actually think he's a big problem child in competitive too. The reason is the character does way too much damage with his left click and his spin. Jakal already gets a ton of value from his hard CC. He has the most CC in the game by far, and I'm going to say it, there are no great Jakals right now in the sense of hook accuracy. No Jakal is hitting, pro level hook consistency. If we had a Jakal in the scene hitting 80% of his hooks, then the character would be taking over. Or at the very least, the meta would be built around Jakal a bit more. This is sort of confirmed and compounded on by the fact that he is such a terror in solo queue where things aren't as organized. The character is reliant on getting in and making that pick happen, and the fact that they can do that without being punished easily in a competitive setting means that in a solo queue setting, he can just go wild for free. There is one stipulation to this, which I think is honestly unhealthy and is going to have to be addressed at some point. I think there is a way to kind of hit two birds in one stone here. The Tosca and Drak matchup is likely the worst matchup in the game, or at least the most frustrating, but I think the change I proposed for Tosca, where they need to be closer to get that full dot damage without fall off, plus making it so Jakal loses a bit of his damage from his spin and his left click, and putting that into his right click, the ranged skill shot, would shift Drakal's offensive power around in a healthy way, while also helping him with the Tosca matchup. The last things I want to talk about here are big kahunas, Earl and AJ, at the top as usual. AJ, there isn't really much for me to say. I think the grapple cooldown nerf was good, but not enough, and I kind of hinted at that in the skit that I did at the beginning. I think they need to hit her mines. Her mines do way too much damage, and they slow on top of it for pretty much no reason. They added that slow a few months before launch to help her out in Alpha Hunters, where she was the weakest. Now that that game mode is gone, or at the very least, if it comes back, it's not going to be the main mode. It's sort of just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as important to have. So I think her mines are, they're skillless. They don't need to be doing a ton of damage. So at the very least, that damage needs to be chunked away. Jonah does not need it. Let's let her have big damage numbers if the player playing them is skilled and hitting their shots. End of story. And then Earl has this weird thing where they are such an incredible character and competitive, but they're okay. They're an A tier. They're balanced in solo queue. The reason for that is Earl's value is maximized when they're sort of fluid between being a DPS threat and being a peeling tank for your team. And Wakey, my teammate, does that exceptionally well. So much so that other teams have tried to pick it up and mimic, but have not done so successfully. Part of the reason for that is Earl is deceptively a hard character. He's a pretty simple kit, and so people usually recommend him along with Mendoza for new players, but I actually think that Mendoza's sort of the only one that fits that easy to pick up category. Earl is bullied when you don't know what you're doing. He's very dependent on good positioning, almost more so than other characters, because, you know, he's a giant target. But like I said, when a skilled player pilots him very well, he shines. He's pretty much just Mendoza, but with really good team defensive tools. And that's where I want to hit the character. I think they need to move power away from his E, or at the very least, away from his range DPS. Let's take off some of his damage fall off, make it so he has to be a little closer to get max value, so he can't just be sniping people like how Mendoza or Jonah does at those far ranges. At the very least, you could take away some duration from E and put it into his can. It's still a defensive tool, but it doesn't block every single projectile in the game and knock people away, and you know, it's not E, right? And so he'll be a little tankier in terms of his health pool because he'll be healing a bit more from the can, but I definitely would rather have the E duration, and so that trade-off at least seems like a good place to start, or with the damage fall off. The point is, you gotta start somewhere. You gotta do something. Please, anything. Give us something. Okay, moving on to the solo queue tier list really quickly. The reason why I waited to talk about Summer for now is that people are disproportionately frustrated at her mobility. However, there are also no Summer players in the competitive scene, except for people from the number 1 team and the number 2 team. Correlation? Causation? I don't know. You tell me. The main takeaway here is that mobility is Summer's identity. The devs built this character around being mobile. If that's true, making Pounce part of her base kit and taking power away from her in her base damages seems like an obvious trade-off to me. If their concern is that farming is also part of her identity, taking away damage from her flamethrower doesn't necessarily take away from her farming, because she still has Q, her magma spiral, which is the best farming tool in the game. Let's talk hypothetically for a second. What if they just took her Pounce away completely? Well, not only would the character be much less fun to play, it'd be like taking away a Jonah's grapple because she's too mobile in combat, or making the grapple itself shorter so it's harder to use, kind of like how double grapple is. The thing is, it would feel a lot worse to use as well. I'm not a fan of nerfing the enjoyment out of characters, especially if players learn to identify that character through those aspects. But I digress. That's not even the point. The nerf to the Pounce didn't even make Pounce worse. It's still optimal to take it. She still zooms around the map because she's pouncing around. It just feels less fun to use. It's hard to describe it because nobody plays the character, but the Pounce just doesn't hold that momentum like it used to. You know, you kind of like plop onto the ground now as opposed to pouncing. But stuff like this is still very possible, and it makes the character able to zoom around the map just like she used to be at. Nothing has really changed, and so what did the nerf do aside from make her feel worse to use? Please just try to bring her numbers on her flamethrower, or at least, especially actually, her fireball. Like what is wrong in letting us test this stuff? We're in closed beta now. There's no excuse. I don't get it. I don't get it. Okay, I cut myself off from the Summer thing. I could probably go forever. There are still a couple things I want to talk about. I know these tier lists are fun to watch because they're predictive in some ways, you know. You can see if the content creator is correct in their propositions and all that. There is one prediction that I want to make, that if Cezanne ever does get performance fixes where she's consistent, she's going to be one of the best characters in the game and will likely need to be nerfed. How they'll do it, I don't know. I think her stacking slow is probably going to be way too frustrating to play against, and I think it's going to lead to conversations about slows in general in this game. My teammate Stormy brought up a good point the other day that if they just changed all of the slows, which, by the way, if you don't know, sometimes affect performance on the character when they're slowed, just like general slows, anything in the game really. If they changed all of those to speed boosts for the character, so every time Cezanne hit a shot, she got a small speed boost that stacked, how the game would feel then. It's just something to think about. And then the last thing I want to talk about is Rahi. Look, I had Rahi in the B tier the other time because he is technically viable. You could use him. EU has actually had success with him. Shout out to Hecate. but it doesn't change the fact that the character is simply weaker than others. We've been testing draft scrims with bans this week and have sprinkled some Rahi into some of the games, and I've actually played a pretty good amount of him. I was level 50 something as Rahi in testing, and I'm about level 30 on him now. And look, the fact of the matter is the character simply doesn't provide anything that you can't get out of another character. You want tankiness with damage, you want support abilities, you want really anything. Except one thing, Rahi has the only ward in the game. I don't know if people actually know this, but when you send Brother out, the area around Brother is revealed, and so characters that are nearby are revealed to your entire team. What I think would be interesting is if they made it so Brother's cooldown is refreshed if he teleports back to you without being destroyed, or if you teleported to him. I don't know. Something to test. Again, I'm going to be using the word test a lot. Just try things. I think Rahi, big picture, needs to be reworked. He's too clunky. There are some possible things like making it so he doesn't have to crouch when he's charging a super jump, or giving him like a triple jump, sort of like how Mario has, where instead of charging a jump, he'll just jump, and if you jump like 3 times in a row, they get progressively bigger until the third one would be like how super jump is now, and you could balance his damage around that sort of in-combat mobility. There was a time where Rahi actually could bunny hop as well, and that was sort of like the most fun and most viable version of him, but the devs are fairly scared of what bunny hopping could do to the game. That's why we have jump penalty in. I think that's the right choice, but I don't know, maybe that's Rahi's thing and he can be the exception to that rule. But again, they need to let us test things. Guys, I think we really need to be adamant and louder about this stuff. If the devs hear that we want balance changes more often, then we could get them. You know, I think this is a great way to keep us interested in the game while we're being patient with all these bigger changes that are coming in. I also simply think the devs need to be bolder with this aspect of the game. They've always been timid when it comes to balance changes, and I simply have run out of excuses to believe as to why they aren't doing so. Again, they have a balance team. I know that everyone's working on a lot of big things for the game right now, but number changes are simple to make. I've proposed a bunch of changes in this video. I can make specific ones if you want, because let's be honest, your closed beta community is essentially QA. Help us help you. Keep the game interesting for us, and we'll be here to support you like we always have been. That's going to wrap up this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any thoughts on the tier lists or anything in specific that I talked about today, please let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't and you want to see more Crucible content. I'll be back with another video soon. Small update for you all that I've finished one of my 2 summer classes. I've been focused on that, and this last one is my language credit, and I struggle with learning languages, I won't lie. So I'm pretty focused on that right now, but glad to be making a video again. For all the latest updates, find my Twitter, or you can join my Discord. I'm always there to chat if you guys have any questions about the game or anything. And I'm also participating in the weekly Crucible tournaments every Sunday. Until next time, stay safe everybody, stay beautiful, and I'll see you later. Peace.